Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you are listening to The Makers of Minnesota, where we talk to cool people doing cool things. And this episode of The Makers of Minnesota is brought to you by the Art Along the Lake Fall Studio Tour in Cook County. It's a 10-day tour. It features 22 home artist studios and galleries and over 55 different artists. You can find a map with more information about the tour at visitcookcounty.com/fall studio tour. And I have the pleasure today of talking to one of the artists that's on the tour, Neil Sherman. Hi, Neil.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. Can you tell me a little bit about how it is that you got involved in this tour, and how long have you lived in Cook County?
I've been in Cook County for just about 15 years, and I first got involved with the Art Along the Lake tour essentially when it first started. So this is its third year, and the Crossing Borders event ended for whatever reason,
Yeah.
and then there were a lot of people up in this area that were part of that tour and that event. Crossing Borders was a huge part of their career. You're making, a huge part of their income, and so I think Cook County felt like there was an opportunity to fill that void and expand it and add other artists, and so they opened it up to essentially any artist working in Cook County. And
so can you tell me a little bit about that? So how long have you lived in Cook County?
I've been here about 15 years.
And what kind of art do you do, Neil?
I do plein air landscape painting. So plein air is a French term for open air or outside. So I work primarily outside on location year round. And then oftentimes I'll take those smaller outdoor sketches and take them into the studio and do, larger pieces from the smaller studies.
So I'm assuming, and I've looked at your website, I'm assuming that part of the reason you're in the area that you're in is because you're inspired by the outdoors. But the elements have got to be challenging with the kind of artwork that you produce.
Yeah, it can be a little daunting. There's an event that the Grand Marais Art Colony started a number of years ago, and that and now it's organized by a group called the Outdoor Painters of Minnesota. But essentially, we go up to...
I didn't know there was such a thing, Neil.
Outdoor Painters of Minnesota painting group. Yeah, I'm not their relative. Well, no, they've been around for a long time. But yeah, there's a organization based out of Minneapolis, and they do a lot of plein air events. But anyways, getting back to the weather being challenging, every year we do a winter painting trip essentially up the Gunflint Trail, and we stay at a YMCA Camp Minogen.
Sure, I know where Minogen is.
Yeah, so in the wintertime they open up their facilities to large groups, and they do programming and stuff. And so we go up there and do plein air painting. And this past year was probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the coldest plein air painting event ever anywhere. The high temperature for the whole week, this is the high temperature. We got there the first day, I think it was 0 degrees, and we were there for 5 days. The rest of the week, the high temperature was minus 17.
Wow. It's got to be hard to move your brush and your fingers when it's that cold.
Yeah, your fingers get pretty painful if you're not too careful. And the paint, I can usually paint outside when it's pretty cold, but at that temperature, boy, the paint it didn't matter what you mixed with it, or if you put any medium into the paint, it was just really hard to
I
move around.
bet.
Yeah.
What is it about the area where you live that inspires you to paint outdoors?
Oh man, this is just about everything. I mean, there's the lake, and it's always changing. And what I really love about the area here is the sky and the clouds. And anytime a storm front goes through, on the tail end of those storm fronts, particularly in the summertime, you can get these really amazing cloud formations, and they're just dramatic. And sometimes you go out and try to paint them, and they change so fast that you can't capture it. And other times it's it holds still long enough to for you to kind of get the essence of what's happening. But I think that's probably one of the things that I love the most about it.
When did you start this particular type of painting? Have you always done plein air painting?
No, I studied art at St. John's University and then graduated in '92, St. John's in Collegeville. And I got an art degree there, but they didn't do landscape painting, which is what I really wanted to do.
Sure.
And then a number of years after I graduated, I found out about a painter in St. Paul named Joe Paquette, who was a landscape painter. And he was doing the kind of paintings that I had always imagined myself doing. And so I started taking classes with him, and that was in the fall of '97. So that's 20-some years that I've been doing this.
And when you go on this tour, the artist tour, people can literally come into your homes and in your studios. Is that how it works?
Yeah, yep. So I have my studio in the first floor of my house. Yeah, people come around, and it's kind of an opportunity for visitors to see where people are creating their art. And everyone's got a different, setup. Some people have actual studios. Other people are part of galleries, particularly right in Grand Marais. There's a number of galleries. But I've had my studio at my house the last few years. And I've done a kind of interesting thing where I have on the outside of my house, I have the siding is black shingles, and there's a lot of space, like there's big blank wall space with no windows. And so I hang paintings on the outside of the house as a little extra.
Oh, that's cool.
A little extra.
Yeah. Flair, as it were.
Yeah. And display space, because my house is pretty small. And so inside there's not a lot of wall space to hang stuff. So I just said, well, hey, I'll just throw it outside.
I love it.
And it looks really cool. Yeah.
During the course of the tour, about how many people come into your home?
Oh, I think it kind of varies from place to place. I think, well, I guess I don't really know. I probably had last year maybe between, 200 people or so.
Oh, yeah, that's quite a bit.
Think of the numbers. Yeah. And, it's a 10-day tour, so the weekends, it covers 2 full weekends, and so those are busier. And then during the middle of the week, of course, it's a little bit slower.
Does it feel weird to have people come into your workspace in your house? I would think that might be kind of private, sort of.
It's not too bad. It's good motivation to clean. And
of course.
So that helps. Yeah, I guess I don't really feel too awkward about it. I think people, in some ways, people kind of enjoy that. Like, you get to see sort of a live workspace. And,
exactly.
It's not a square white studio with no lights. It's really different.
I bet it's a lot more interesting.
And then there's a lot of, for me, and I think a lot of other people who have studios in their homes, you get to see a lot of, like, I have some of my own personal, like, not artwork that I've collected that not made by me, and people get to see, you get a little glimpse into your life, just more than just just the painting, I guess. Like, oh wow, look, he spills paint on the floor, or oh, I love that braided rug, or where did you get that stool you sit on? Stuff like that. Right.
Well, the tour is brought to us by Cook County, and Fall on the North Shore of Lake Superior, as you said, is a beautiful time to visit. And there's Art Along the Lake Fall Studio Tour. But also, when you're there, they have great places to lodge, great places to eat. And the tour happens during peak fall colors, and it spans 10 days. And again, features 22 home artist studios and galleries, and over 55 different artists who get their inspiration from Lake Superior and the surrounding beauty. You might remember the decades-long Crossing Borders Fall Tour that Neil mentioned. And it ended in 2016, so they picked up and decided, hey, we should continue to do this because this is a pretty cool event. So besides visiting with Neil, you can visit with other makers and artists and get access to their closed home studios, which is cool. This is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing, I would assume. Do other people do something like this, Neil? Have you ever heard of anything like this before in any other places?
I know I'm sure it happens. I know in there's a big pottery tour, I think, down along the St. Croix. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
But so yeah, I think there's a lot of different art tours around, but I'm not really familiar with.
Sure. Do you know any of the other artists that are going to be on the tour? And can you tell me about what other types of art people might experience besides your painting?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a little bit of everything. If you come up to my end of the tour, which is we're on kind of the far end of the lake, toward Grand Portage. There's Dan and Lee Ross, who are amazing sculptors and printmakers, and they have a really cool studio right on the lake. Lou Pignolet does these amazing wood churned bowls. He's always demonstrating.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
I would imagine. I mean, geez, to stick a big chunk of wood in this high rotating lathe and chop it down.
It's hard.
Would be daunting. And Joe Wood she does these amazing felted and beaded paintings that are really cool. She's kind of on our end of the tour, but there's everything from pottery to jewelry to fused glass. There's a variety and then if you go into town and hit the galleries, then they have even more stuff on top of
right.
that. So
when people are in town, is there a restaurant that you like?
Oh, they're all good. My favorite place, I don't know if it'll be open. Hopefully it'll be open, but the Crooked Spoon is really excellent, and I know they have kind of varying hours. They probably will be open, but they have this great little I forget what it's called, but it's like a little wine bar.
Oh, sweet!
It sits up above the restaurant, and it's sort of designed for when there's a wait list, you can go up there and have a drink. And you can actually have food up there. It's really cool. There's a cool view of Grand Marais. That's pretty neat. So it's just kind of out of the way. It's really cool.
When people come to visit Grand Marais, is there any, what do you tell them about it? Why do you think people should come, other than the beautiful fall colors and the lake, of course, and the tour?
Yeah, it's just a quaint little place. It feels really remote, especially if you're when you drive into town, you come around this curve, and you can see way down the lake, and there's just this little spit of land. That's Grand Marais, and you just sort of get this whole sense of like, wow, this is a pretty big place, and I'm pretty small in it.
And I feel like I can see that in your paintings too, actually. When I was looking online at the gallery that you have, I get a real sense of place of Grand Marais by looking at the paintings that you do. Your website is neilshermanart.com. When people are looking at your art, do you actually sell art when people come to the tour? Is that the goal? I would assume it is.
Yes. Yep.
How do you know how much to price your art at? Because there's probably no amount that you really can get for it that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because you work so hard on them.
It was just right before you called. I was looking at a podcast that the title was 6 ways to price your paintings. And then, and I thought, I should read that or listen to it.
Yeah.
Just to hear what they have to say. But it's really subjective. I think it kind of depends on where you're at in your career. I guess I kind of look at what other, like my peers, other painters that do similar work are charging for their stuff. What's your reputation? I mean, do you have there's a lot of other plein air painting events that happen around the country, and there's people that do the tours, they kind of do the circuit of those events and, do well at those. And I think that ups your reputation a little bit. And I think if your reputation is nice, and that affords you a little leeway to maybe bump your prices up a little bit.
And do you ever anticipate?
And I think part of it might be the market where you're living. But I don't have a lot of experience with other markets across the country, but just Grand Marais. So. And
when you sell a piece of art, what does that feel like? Are you sad to see it go, or does it feel like, oh, this is excellent, I've succeeded?
It depends on what the bank account looks like.
Sure.
No, I'm always excited. I mean, to have somebody pay a lot of money for, something that's really personal to you. The best example that I can share is I did one, this is a number of years ago, I did just because I wanted to do it for myself. I did this painting of It was a rainy, I think it was a fall day. It was rainy, and there was construction. I was living in the cities. There was construction going on, and there was a backhoe with the backhoe bucket just stuck in the mud. And there's mud on it, and there's mud, there's piled mud everywhere. And it's like, I'm just going to make a painting of that because I like it. And I'm like, who's ever going to want to buy this? And somebody bought it. And so I'm like, wow, that's amazing when you, to me, when you can sort of affect somebody by, painting something that's a lot of people would just say, wow, what's the appeal to that?
Sometimes that's what the appeal is, though, is it's like seeing something in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually exciting because, at least for me, and I'm sure for other artists, you sort of question yourself, like, is this painting going to sell? Or maybe I should paint something that I know everyone's going to like, or you think everyone's going to like. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it blows up in your face. So I always kind of lean toward, just paint the things that you love and trust that you're going to have an audience for that somewhere. And it's worked out pretty well for me. Like I feel comfortable trusting that, but it's exciting when, people respond the way to something that you see that's sort of out of the ordinary. About
how long does each painting take you?
It varies. A typical session outside is like around 2 to 3 hours. If you're working on like early morning or late evening, obviously the light is changing quickly, so you're forced to move a little faster. So maybe it's an hour. So anywhere from an hour to 3 hours is pretty standard.
And you can get a painting done in that time, or you're like, how many hours total would be in a typical piece of work?
If I'm working outside, I try to finish it on location.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. And if it's a bigger piece, sometimes that will, I'll get it 80 or 90% done outside, and then just take it back into the studio and tweak it just for, just from my, like, oh, it could use a little work here, it could need something here, take something out there.
Sure.
But yeah, typically I like to finish it on the spot.
And Neil, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Again, It is Visit Cook County. And Neil, perhaps I'll see you on the tour.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today on this Makers Podcast. We appreciate it. This episode of the Makers of Minnesota, featuring Neil Sherman, was brought to you by the Art Along the Lake Fall Studio Tour in Cook County. It spans 10 days and features 22 home artist studios and galleries and over 55 different artists. You can find a map with more information about the tour that is September 27th through October 6th at visitcookcounty.com/fall studio tour.